So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, we are continuing with the discussion on the zakat and especially the Ushr masala. So, if you watched the video last session, then you know that the Ushr masala is basically at the borders of the Muslims. So, where you have the borders of the Muslims, you have these individuals that have been deputed by the government to collect like funds from people, and we call this guy the Ushr. Technically, he collects a 10% payment from foreigners. So foreigners, the Harbiyun, the people that come from outside, when they come in, they will be coming to do some business. So therefore, there's like a tax, you can say. There's like this kind of like almost, you can say, a VAT or a custom tax on the mal, and the dhimmi is the one who is the Muslim resident, the non-Muslim resident of a Muslim country. He has to pay double of what a Muslim pays. So he pays 5%. So if he has mal, he's going to pay 5% towards that. And this is going to be treated as jizya, but it's not going to be his jizya. Meaning, the money will be taken from him, but he still has to give his jizya. But the funds are going to be channeled into the Baytul Mal as a jizya fund. So imagine Baytul Mal is like multiple accounts. So the Baytul Mal will have account which is purely just zakat, and have an account that's purely for war booty, and it has an account that's purely for let's say jizya. And then these different allocated funds can be used in different areas of the Muslim lands. Right? So the Khalifa, he is obviously in charge of maintaining all of that, or the incoming funds. So it's basically to run the country. Yeah, it's the funds that are required to run the country. Nowadays we have taxes, but in the olden days they had these things in place. And the Muslim here only has to give 2.5% of his mal. And we also mentioned last week, if you remember, the idea that the rules of zakat will apply over here, meaning that 1 year has to go by, and if you've given your zakat already, then they won't take it off you, and so forth. So we discussed this last week, if you remember. So I think it was from here. وَمَا صُدِّقَ فِيهِ الْمُسْلِمُ صُدِّقَ فِيهِ الذِّمِّيُّ. Was it from here? I can't remember exactly what the last sentence was. I think that was it. Or was it لا يصدق الحربي? Or was it from يؤخذ من المسلم? So I can't remember exactly where we. نقرأ بنسم من في يده منه صحيح كذا. Yeah, I think it was from يؤخذ من المسلم then. يؤخذ من المسلم, yeah? Okay, good. Right, so ويؤخذ من المسلم ربع العشر ومن الذمية نصف العشر ومن الحربية العشر. So it will be taken from a Muslim ربع العشر. Right, so from a Muslim, the Ushr is going to take ربع العشر. So Ushr is 10th, ربع العشر is quarter of a 10th, which we call 2.5%. Okay, ومن الذمية, and from a dhimmi, a non-Muslim resident, نصف العشر. So nisf al-ushr is basically double of what the Muslim gives. And ومن الحربي al-ushr, so 10% is going to be taken. So basically 4 times what a Muslim gives, the Harbi is going to give. Where do we get these figures from? So هكذا أمر عمر سعاته. Su'at is the jama of sa'i, which means the zakat collector. Another word for zakat collector is sa'i. So the su'at, they were instructed by Umar radiallahu anhu, and in fact here he brings the narration of this as well. Yeah, he says استعملني أنس ibn Malik على الأيلة. Yeah, so Anas ibn Malik, he made me an amil, a governor over Ayla, over the area of Ayla. So فقلت استعملتني على المكس من عملك. So you used me for maks. Maks is another word for collecting the funds, and like we said last week, there are some hadith that prohibit the collection of maks, but that was when it was done in a dhulm manner. He said, خُذْ مَا كَانَ عُمَرُ ibn Khattab يَأْخُذْ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْإِسْلَامِ. He said, take whatever Umar used to take from the people of Islam. So see, this is an important point here. The reason it's important is because it tells us there was a precedence. There was a precedence from the Sahaba. So people used to use evidence of the Sahaba as a dalil. That's why the Hanafis are very particular about the practice of the Sahaba, especially the Khulafa. Yeah, so he says, خذ ما كان عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه يأخذ من أهل الإسلام. take what Umar used to take from the people of Islam, meaning 2.5%. إِذَا بَلَغَ مِئَتَيْ دِرْهَمْ. So long as the people that are passing by, that when they come to the checkpoint, you check their mal, and if it reaches the value of 200 dirhams, then you take min kulli 40 dirhaman dirhamun. From every 40 dirhams, you take 1 dirham, meaning 2.5%. وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الذِّمَّةِ, and you take from أهل الذِّمَّة min kulli 20 dirhaman, from every 20 dirhams, you take 1 dirham, which is 5%. وَمِمَّنْ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الذِّمَّةِ, and you take from those people who do not come under أهل الذِّمَّة min kulli 10 دراهم dirhamun. Every 10 dirhams you take 1, so 1/10 basically. Okay, so this is the practice of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Like we said, this is because Umar radiallahu anhu was the governor and he expanded the Muslim empire. Then the borders obviously had checkpoints, and wherever people used to pass by, then they'd be checked. And now, if a person did not have the money, like he says over here, in marra harbiyun, let's say a non-Muslim from foreign lands comes into the Muslim lands, a harbi, bi 50 dirhaman, and he's checked and he's only got 50 silver coins with him. That's not the nisab. Lam yu'khad minhu shay'un. Nothing will be taken from him. Why? Because the rule is that the ashir's the money that he takes, it's going to be based upon the rules of zakat. So that's why we're going to consider nisab, just like we consider nisab in zakat. And we're also going to consider all those other factors as well. So he says, if the harbi has only 50 dirhams, and if he has 100 dirhams, and if he has 150 dirhams, then there's no zakat on him, right? And if it was in gold, then obviously it's going to be according to the gold measure. إِلَّا أَن يَكُونُوا يَأْخُذُونَ مِنَّا مِنْ مِثْلِهَا. Unless the foreign land government take from us Muslims when we go there similar. What does that mean? So basically, let's say for example this is a Muslim land. So this is a Muslim land, and then outside there's foreign lands, and these foreign lands, they have checkpoints as well. So whenever Muslim travelers travel from Muslim lands to the non-Muslim lands to do trade, they used to also take some sort of tax from them as well. So the rule basically was that if they take from us, right, 50, so if we have 50 dirhams and they take money from us, they take 1 dirham or 2 dirham, whatever, then we're going to take from them. But normally, if they don't take from us, we're going to stick to our zakat rules. So we only diverge from the zakat rules if they take from Muslims this. Why is this for? It's لأن الأخذ منهم بطريق المجازات. Because in that case, taking from harbis, in that case, is by way of recompense. So we are recompensing them for how they're treating Muslims. Yeah, so it's more of like you can almost say like an international law. Yeah, like a foreign policy that we have. So our foreign policy is that we want them to realize that if you are going to take from our citizens, if you're going to take money from our citizens, then be prepared because we're going to take it from yours. And this kind of puts pressure on them as well. Just like nowadays in the world where you have countries and they levy tariffs onto, different countries. So when goods are coming imported and exported, right, they'll say, where is it coming from? And certain mal that comes from a certain country will have high tax, and certain mal has a low tax because there's, trade agreements that they have between themselves, or maybe they have some sort of sanctions or whatever. Yeah, so again, all of these, so it's important whenever you study the chapters of, I personally would say, whenever you study the chapters of any fiqh ruling that is to do with international law, foreign policy, then it's very, very important to read, like for example, the sections of zakat, because that's to do with foreign policy. This section specifically, the sections to do with jihad, the sections to do with siyar, siyar and jihad similar, and to do with other sort of rules which are foreign related. Yeah, and Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, he is considered to be the pioneer, even according to many Western academics, of international law, foreign policy. Yeah, because he's written 2 books on this, Al-Siyar al-Saghir and Siyar al-Kabir. Yeah, Siyar al-Saghir, Siyar al-Kabir. And they say when he wrote Siyar al-Saghir and Imam Awza'i saw this, Imam Awza'i was the mujtahid of Lebanon, when he saw this, he said, what do the people of Kufa know about jihad? Jihad has pretty much, most of it has been taken place in the Levant, in Sham. So these people, like people of Kufa, they haven't seen jihad since the borders were stretched towards Iraq and Persia. So then Imam Muhammad wrote another book, As-Siyar al-Kabir. And when Imam Awza'i saw this, he said, if it wasn't for the fact that this book contained references to ayats and hadith, I would have thought that the author of this book, i.e. Imam Muhammad, had sort of like invented his own science, it was so amazing the book was, that it seems as though he had invented his own science. That's how impressed he was by this. Yeah, so a lot of times when we're like dealing with fiqh, because of our lack of exposure to certain fields, fiqh can become extremely abstract, right? We can't see the relevance. So if you study tahara like you study zakat, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because zakat is a like publicly applied chapter, whereas tahara is an individual. It's a personal obligation. So that's why it's very important to expose yourself to how things work in the world. And once you understand how the foreign policy works, then it makes a lot of sense. Chapters of zakat will make a lot of sense. And let's, for argument's sake, let's say there's a Muslim, the government tomorrow decides, right, we need Muslim scholars to make some laws, and they called you. How would you implement it in today's times? Yeah, because and interestingly enough, I was speaking to one of my students who's a judge in the UK, and he was saying a lot of what you find in Hidayah, he says a lot of it is basically has been taken by the West, especially British law. A lot of what's in there has been taken by the British law, and you find a lot of it this in there. Yeah, like onus is upon the claimant. Yeah, the proof of burden is upon the claimant. That's like a rule that's been from our sources, and especially when it comes to foreign policy as well, how people deal with foreign policy. So anyway, so he says, لأن الأخذ منهم بطريق المجازات. So taking from them is now going to be not because it follows the rules of zakat, but now it's going to be overridden by another factor, which is, as Muslims, we have to show our strength. So therefore, if they are going to deal with us in this way, we're going to also take from them. So now they're going to be under pressure now, because a country obviously wants import and export. That's what they rely upon. And if it's going to harm them, like this is a very good point for how putting sanctions on countries and imports and exports is actually something which you can even see within the fiqh itself. It's putting pressure on people, financial pressure on countries. And so this is what he says. بخلاف المسلم والذمي, as opposed to a Muslim and a dhimmi. Yeah, so we don't take from Muslims and dhimmis. Muslim and dhimmis, we still apply the same rules, because remember we said the whole point of the Ushr, the Ushr, is al-himaya, which is protection. We're guaranteeing them protection, that they can roam around in the Muslim state, and the authorities will always give them protection from others. لأن المأخوذ زكاة أو ضعفها, because when it comes to a Muslim and a dhimmi, what's taken from the Muslim and the dhimmi is either zakat or double zakat, ضعفها. Yeah, that's how we treat it. Yeah, it's zakat, or it's simply double the zakat. Where do we get this concept of double the zakat? Yeah, this concept of double the zakat is actually from a narration where Umar radiallahu anhu, he there was a tribe, Banu Taghlib, and they said, look, we don't want to give jizya. We don't want to give jizya. And he said, but call it something else and charge us whatever you want. So Umar said, fine, call it whatever you want, but I'm going to charge you double of what I normally charge others. So this is why they give it a double. That's most likely where where this is. This is a double sort of charge. But the hadith that I mentioned in the beginning, where Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu mentions about the Umar radiallahu anhu taking 1/20th from them. That's the asl for that. But the idea is you're charging them double. So he says zakat, ma'khudh, zakat. So what's taken from a Muslim and a dhimmi is either zakat or double the zakat. What's taken from a harbi is not zakat. That is considered to be like a tax. Yeah, that's like a foreign tax that comes in. فَلَا بُدَّ مِنَ النِّصَابِ. So that's why we need to follow the rules of nisab when it comes to a Muslim and a dhimmi. We're not gonna charge them more than what we should, right? وَهَذَا فِي الْجَامِعِ الصَّغِيرِ. Now this text, he says, this is what's found in Jami' al-Saghir. Yeah, so this text is in Jami' al-Saghir. In other words, what we just read over here, that from the Harbi we take, whatever they charge us Muslims going there, we're going to charge them the same. And that's in Jami' al-Saghir. And في كتاب الزكاة, most likely كتاب الزكاة here refers to al-Asl. Yeah, Imam Muhammad's al-Asl al-Mabsut. Yeah, in كتاب الزكاة. So he said, in كتاب الزكاة لا نأخذ من القليل وإن كانوا يأخذون منا. Right, so the other argument is, we don't take from them, meaning we still follow the rules of zakat. We still follow the rules of zakat when it comes to al-harb. So if they take from us zakat, tax, even if we have 50 silver coins, we're not going to stoop to that level. Right? We're not going to use the concept of mujazat. We are simply going to use our own rules. So if they have 200, we're going to take from them, and if they have less than 200, we're not going to take from them. He says, وَإِن كَانُوا يَأْخُذُونَ مِنَّا مِنْهُ. So even if they take from us, from that amount. لأن القليل لم يزل عفوا. Because according to the rules, like according to the qiyas, you can say that the qaleel is considered to be afu, meaning the qaleel is considered to be something which is pardoned, it's forgiven. Right, so 50 is forgiven, 100 is forgiven, 150 is forgiven, anything below 200 is qaleel. Yeah, so this is considered to be qaleel, and therefore it's unfair that we take from them this amount. If they're doing dhulm, we're not going to do dhulm. That's the argument. Right, so they're doing dhulm, okay, that's them, but we're not gonna imitate them in this. So لأن القليل لم يزل عفوا ولأنه لا يحتاج إلى الحماية. And the other argument is because لا يحتاج إلى الحماية, because he doesn't need protection. If you're walking around with 50 silver coins, no one's really going to rob you. Like, even if you get robbed, what's wrong? You've lost 50 silver coins, 40 silver coins. That isn't really that much. Yeah, so this is why the idea is that the Ushr is supposed to represent that fund. The money that you're giving the Ushr is like, I'm coming to your country, but now I've kind of like been guaranteed protection now. The money that I'm giving you guaranteed me protection. So these are the two texts that we have. Now, remember we mentioned this before. What happens if you have two texts? One's in Jami' al-Saghir, one's in Al-Asl. Which one do you take? Does anyone remember? Which one do you take and why? Yeah? No. So you take what's in Jami' al-Saghir. Yeah, because Jami' is later. Yeah, so you take what the Jami' al-Saghir says, because if you remember, we said that that the Mabsut was written first, and then the Jami' al-Saghir was written later, right? So it has more updated. Yeah, so the Jami' al-Saghir is the more updated version. Okay, I'm just gonna have to mute that. Yeah, so the Jami' al-Saghir is considered to be a later version, so therefore it's got more updated masail in there. Yeah, so that's the one that we take. But Sahib al-Hidayah, he hasn't really kind of given preference of one over the other. Usually what he does is, the last statement that he mentions is considered to be the stronger statement. So here it seems as though that he seems to be inclined towards the Jami' the Asl position. That's why he seems to be inclined towards, because he's brought it later on. He hasn't said that the Jami' al-Saghir. But by bringing the Jami' al-Saghir position as the matan, like in the text of Hidayah, Bidayat al-Mubtadi, it seems as though, okay, maybe that is the priority. We can't tell from this. We'd have to look into other texts to be able to see. Okay. All right. So we have a clash over there. All right. Next. Now, actually, let's look in Jami' al-Saghir and let's look in Asl. Let's see what the exact text says. All right. Let's just see. So if you go to Turath, actually, if I put the text over here, I can show you guys this. So Turath is a good way to kind of verify what these texts are saying. So let's say, for example, we go to Bahath. Yeah, go to Bahath and then do a little search. So for example, like type in, what was the masala? Well, so خمسين العاشر. Okay, let's go to Qism. Let's go to Hanafi. Okay, so خمسين الحربي. Put keywords in. Okay, نطف في الفتاوى. Okay, السير الصغير. Okay, سير الصغير. So this is one of the ones I was talking about. باب أشور أهل الحرب. قلت أرأيت الرجل المستأمن من أهل الحرب إذا خرج إلى دار الإسلام بأمان. So what would happen with regards to a man from Dar al-Harb who comes with protection, a visa, min Ahl al-Harb, and he comes to Dar al-Islam بأمان فأشره العاشر, and the Ashir has taken Ushr from him. ثم دخل فمكث أياما في دار الحرب, and then he's gone for a short excursion to Dar al-Harb for a few days. ثم خرج أيضا, and then he comes back to Dar al-Islam. Is he going to be charged a second time? So Imam Hidayah is going to talk about this, right? So we don't have to go into this, right? Is he going to be charged again or not? Okay, let's look at this one. He says, قلت فإن كان أهل بلاده يأخذون, if the people of his country are taking from our تجار المسلمين الخمس الخمس, قال إذا أخذ منهم الخمس قلت إنما ينبغي للعاشر, then it's important for the Ashir أن ينظر إلى ما يأخذ من أهل بلاده من تجار المسلمين. The Ashir should still look at what he normally takes from Muslims. فيأخذ منهم مثله, he should take from them what he normally takes. Meaning, if they're taking 20% of our mal, so we're businessmen going to Dar al-Harb and they're charging us 20%, then should we also, follow in suit and do what they're doing? He says, no, he should look at what the Muslims doing. فيأخذ مثله, قال نعم آخذ منه كما يأخذ أهل بلادي من تجار المسلمين. He goes, no. He says, he should take from him like he takes from تجار المسلمين. إن أخذوا أكثر من عشر, if they charge us more than a tenth, أخذت منهم أكثر, I will take from them more. فإن أخذوا من المسلمين أقل من عشر, and if they take from them, our Muslim businessmen, less than a tenth, right? So they take a tenth, 5%. أخذت منهم الأقل آخذ منه ما يأخذون من تجار المسلمين. So he seems to be, his position in Sir al-Saghir seems to be, whatever they're taking from us, we're going to take from them. Yeah, so this seems to be another opinion that's been mentioned as well. Let's see if he's okay. قلت أرأيت الحربي يمر بأقل من 200 درهم. So Harbi comes to Muslim lands and he's got less than 50 dirhams. هل يؤخذ منه شيء? Should you take anything from him, i.e. 50? قال لا, don't take anything from him. قلت فإن كانوا يأخذون من تجار المسلمين, what if they take from the businessmen of the Muslims من أقل من 200 درهم, أيأخذ منهم? قال نعم, then take it. إذا كانوا يأخذون من أقل من 200 درهم, they're taking from us less than 200, أخذت أنا أيضا كما يأخذون. Yeah, then I'm going to take from them what they are taking. So this text seems to indicate, yes, you do take from them. Yeah, irrespective of how much it is. Yeah. And in fact, I think this is a good point, because I was speaking to some people and they were saying to me, the Sir al-Saghir is actually considered to be part of the Asl, which that doesn't seem to show that is part of the Asl. Yeah. But anyway, فَعَشَرُ الْعَشَرَةَ مُدَخْلَ مُكْتَ أَيَّامٍ. Okay, let's look at Asl. Asl, what does Asl say? باب أشور أهل الحرب. Okay. يأخذون من تجار المسلمين. قال إذن أخذ من الخمس. إنما ينبغي للعاشر أن ينظر إلى ما يأخذ أهل بلاده من تجار المسلمين. نعم. Actually, it looks almost identical. Yeah. So it seems identical of what Jami al-Saghir, Sir al-Saghir is saying. وأرأيت الحربي يمر بأقل من 200 درهم. قال لا. قلت كانوا يأخذون من تجار المسلمين أقل من 200 درهم أتأخذ منهم؟ قال نعم إذا كانوا يأخذون من أقل من 200 درهم. قلت أرأيت الرجل منهم يمر بالإبل. Yeah. So Asl seems to be saying that you should take it. So what Hidayah is saying that in Asl, لا نأخذ من القليل وإن كانوا يأخذون, that doesn't seem to be in Jamil, in Asl. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be the Asl text. Okay, so that's an interesting point. Okay, let's look at Mabsut Sarakhsi. Mabsut Sarakhsi. سبب الوفاة. Okay, قال إذا مر المسلم العاشر بالماشية والعاشر يأخذ إلا زكاة وجوب الزكاة بصفة الحربي فلا يصدق بذلك. Okay, anyway, you can't seem to find this text then he's talking about. I can't seem to find it. Okay, so anyway, that's the kind of thing that you want to do. You want to investigate. You want to find out what exactly he said. All right, so actually, Binaya might have mentioned it. Let's look at Binaya. Let's see what Binaya says. Al Binaya. هو الخراج الجزية وما أخذ العاشر من المسلمين أهل الحرب وما أخذ التجار. No, that's not it. Okay, that's the one. Okay, so وإن مر حربي كتاب الزكاة يعني المذكور في كتاب الزكاة من في الأصل وهو المبسوط محمد أيضا we can't to find it there. من القليل no محيط إن أخذوا منا الجميع يؤخذ. Okay, we'll leave that one there. Okay, so he says وإن مر حربي, and if a Harbi was to come into our lands, right, was to enter our lands بمئتي درهم ولا يؤلم كم يأخذون منا, and we don't know how much they take from us. نأخذ منه الأشر, we're just going to take an Ushr from them. So if we have no idea of their policy, we take a tenth. لقول عمر رضي الله عنه فإن أعياكم فالأشر, meaning if you're incapable, أعيا يعي إعياء, it means if they أعجزكم, if it's unclear to you that you don't know how much they're taking, فالأشر, then only take from them الأشر. Yeah. وإن علم أنهم يأخذون منا ربع أشر, and if it's known that they take from us ربع أشر, meaning 2.5%, or نصف أشر, نأخذ بقدره, we will also take from them that amount. So this seems to be based on the concept of mujazat. Right? The idea is that if they are easy with us, then we wanna become easy with them. Right? So it's like kind of like a foreign policy. وإن كانوا يأخذون الكل, what if they take all of our wealth? لا نأخذ الكل. Yeah, we're not going to take all of their wealth. Why? لأنه غدر, because this is considered to be غدر. Yeah, because it's like we guarantee them protection. Yeah, we said to them that we're going to protect your mal, and now we're the ones that have taken all their mal. So that seems to be a bit of a cheat, that is. Okay, now some have said, like for example in Bahr al-Ra'iq and others, they've said that if they take all from us, some of the Hanafis say that you take all from them except a small amount that will get them back home. So when our Muslims go there and they take all of our wealth, so when they come here, we're going to take all their wealth except for that amount that's going to get them home. Yeah, so we're going to give them funds enough to get home. But Sahib al-Hidayah doesn't take that view. وَإِن كَانُوا لَا يَأْخُذُونَ أَصْلًا, what if they don't take anything from our Muslim businessmen? لَا نَأْخُذ, then we're not going to take a thing. Why? Because mujazat, remember? We want to do mujazat with them. لِيَتْرُكُوا الْأَخَذْ مِنْ تُجَارِنَا. Yeah. In order for them, so we're going to treat them this way. So because remember, when our Muslims are going to go to their lands to do business, what's going to happen is that our Muslims are going to come back with more mal. And the more mal they come back with, that means it's going to be more beneficial for the Muslims because it's going to strengthen them financially. So financially, like working towards a strong, financially stable government is like, you can almost say, like as important as knowledge, seeking knowledge, as important as military. All of these things are important. So this is why financially we need to become as strong as possible. So one of the strategies is that if they're not going to take from us, we're not going to take from them. Right? Not because we don't want to take from them, but because we want them to also treat our businessmen in the same fashion. لِيَتْرُكُوا الْأَخَذْ مِنْ تُجَّارِنَا, in order for them to leave, taking this fee from our businessmen. وَلِأَنَّا أَحَقُّ, and also secondly, لِأَنَّا أَحَقُّ بِمَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. This is a good point. Because even with your enemy, showing good etiquette and manners is also something that as Muslims we should be superior in. So the fiqhi element to it is more to do with we want them to have a good relationship between us so that financially we can grow stronger. But also there's the akhlaq part of it as well. And this is why, for example, Imam Muhammad rahimahullah, he was asked once, he was asked, how comes you haven't written any books on zuhud, tazkiyah zuhud? So he said, I have. He said, where? He said, the chapters of buyut mu'amalat. Because in the chapters of mu'amalat, that's where real sort of selflessness is going to manifest itself. Is a person going to be selfless with their mal? Is a person going to deal in a fair and just manner with other people, with the buyer, with the seller, and so forth? So this is also one of those لِأَنَّا أَحَقُّ بِمَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. So at a government level, so imagine there's a country, just now if you've seen what the news about what's happening in Qatar with the World Cup and all that, this is a great opportunity for non-Muslims to see how Muslims are treated. So what's going to happen now is going to have a knock-on effect now, right? Because when the non-Muslims go back, their countries are going to find out about them as well, and that will create good relations between them. So لِأَنَّا أَحَقُّ, and as Muslims we are more deserving with makarim al-akhlaq than them. Why are we more deserving? Because we believe that we are upon the haqq. We believe in Allah, and Allah has commanded us, قُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ خَيْرًا, say good to people, قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, nice, soft words as well. So it also shows us that when it comes to foreign, sometimes we have this image of, as Muslims, when we're dealing with non-Muslims, we always be a bit harsh. We always, are quite staunch and strict. And no, so with non-Muslims, we're also kind with non-Muslims as well. Especially if we know it's going to have a good impact on them as well, right? So it's creating good relationship. Maybe it'll bring them closer towards Islam as well. Anyway, so this is a rare place in Hidayah. I would say, from my reading of Hidayah, this is one of those rare places in Hidayah that you'll find a statement like this. That they will actually, because fiqh is not based upon akhlaq. If you kind of study fiqh, it's based upon dalil, just law. And in law, you don't get this idea of the moral high ground, although it's there in between the lines, but you don't find it as a categorical dalil for something. Yeah, it's there, but it's kind of very sparse throughout the book. Okay, قال وإن مر حربي على عاشر فعشره ثم مر مرة أخرى لم يعشره حتى يحول الحول. So this is the masla that I read to you guys from Siyar al-Saghir. In marra harbiyun, if a harbi, if a non-Muslim, he comes and he passes by checkpoint of the ashir, فَأَشَّرَهُ, and he's taken his 10% from him, ثُمَّ مَرَّ مَرَّةً أُخْرى, and then he passes a second time, right? So let's say a month later he passes a second time, لَمْ يُعَشِّرْهُ, he won't be charged a second time. Yeah, حَتَّى يَحُولَ الْحَوْلِ, until 1 year passes. Yeah. Now this is for example, if he enters and he's in the Muslim land, traveling around as a tourist or a businessman doing whatever, and then after a few months he passes by again. So if he passes to leave this time, he's not gonna get charged twice. That's what he's saying. لم يؤشره حتى يحول الحول, until 1 year passes. Now if he's been in the Muslim country for more than 12 months and now he passes back through the checkpoint, he's going to be charged a second time. Why is this for? He said, لأن الأخذ في كل مرة استئصال المال. So because if you were to take from him every time, theoretically, he could pass multiple times by the checkpoints, and eventually all his mal would end, right? Because the amount of ushr that are taken off him. لأن الأخذ في كل مرة, because the ashir taking at every every time is going to result in isti'sal. Isti'sal means like, it means to kind of uproot. It's going to end. It's going to istihlak al-mal. It's going to consume all of his wealth. وَحَقُّ الْأَخْذِ لِحِفْظِهِ. Remember we said الْجِبَايَةُ بِالْحِمَايَةِ. Taking funds is proportionate to the protection that you're going to give them. So if you're saying to them, look, this money is for your protection, but you're taking from them all their mal, that's unfair. That's like we talked about before. This is like the concept of ghadr. Yeah, so this is not fair. So he said, حَقُّ الْأَخْذِ لِحِفْظِهِ. The right of taking from him is really to protect his wealth. وَلِأَنَّ حُكْمَ الْأَمَانِ. And the second reasoning is حُكْمُ الْأَمَانِ الْأَوَّلْ بَاقٍ. Because the first time the money was taken, he had like a 12-month visa. You can say a 12-month, money, so like it's protected. حُكْمُ الْأَمَانِ الْأَوَّلْ بَاقٍ, still there. Yeah. Because remember, the ruling of Ashir falls under zakat, and zakat follows the rules of the year, and therefore the year hasn't passed. وَبَعْدَ الْحَوْلِ يَتَجَدَّدَ الْأَمَانِ. But after 1 year passes, this is where now aman, protection of the wealth, needs to be renewed now. They need to get a new stamp. لِأَنَّهُ لَا يُمَكَّنْ مِنَ الْمَقَامِ إِلَّا حَوْلًا. Because usually what happens was the government doesn't usually give like stay in the country, in the Muslim state, for more than a year. لا يمكن من المقام إلا حولا. So it's only usually 1 year. Now, if you look at the hashia over here, it says, he says, إلا حولا ليس كذلك. So he says this isn't correct. وَالصَّوَابْ مَا فِي بَعْضِ النُّسُخ بِدُونِ لَفْظَةِ إِلَّا. Yeah, so in other words, it should have actually been like this. لا يمكن من المقام حولا. He won't be allowed to stay in a place for a year. Yeah, so it's not إلا حولا. So the version that says without the إلا, Fath al-Qadir says that's more correct. رأيت في بعض النسخ كلمة إلا مكشوطة فكأنهم كشتوها, like it's been deleted out. حتى لا يرد على المصنف بشيء وليس هذا بالصحيح. Yeah. Anyway, so this idea of a year. Now, this isn't necessarily like a categorical rule from the Quran and Sunnah that they can only stay in the Muslim country for a year. This is something, maybe in them days, this was something that was the norm. 1 year. Person has 1 year. So he says, وَالْأَخْذُ بَعْدَهُ لَا يَسْتَأْصِلُ الْمَالِ. So therefore, taking the funds, taking the ushr a second time after 12 months passing will not decimate the mal, will not decimate his mal, will not obliterate his mal. Okay, so وَإِنْ عَشَّرَهُ فَرَجَ إِلَى دَارِ الْحَرْبِ. But what if this happens? He's come to the Muslim lands, he's been, ushr has been taken from him, and then let's say a month later he decides to go back to Dar al-Harb. So he went to Dar al-Harb, ثُمَّ خَرَجَ مِنْ يَوْمِهِ ذَلِكَ عَشَّرَهُ أَيْضًا. So on the same day he comes back to the Muslim lands, he's going to have to give a second ushr. But isn't this going against what we said early on? Because we said within 12 months he's not going to be charged a second time. He goes, no, that's different, because remember there's two things here. One is following the rules of zakat, and one is this aman, this himaya, right? So aman ends in two ways. It either ends with the ending of the year, 12 months, or it ends with the Harbi going back to his land. So when you go back to your land, it's like your visa is revoked. You lost your visa. You have to now apply for a new one now. So he says, لِأَنَّهُ رَجَعَ بِأَمَانٍ جَدِيدٍ. Because now he returns with a new aman, with a new protection. وَكَذَا الْأَخْذُ بَعْدَهُ لَا يُفْدِي إِلَى الْإِسْتِئْصَالِ. So remember that the asl illa is, will his mal be decimated? So we said, no, it won't, because if you go back to your land, you're most likely going to get more reserves, you're going to get more mal. So when you're going to get more mal, that means, you've got more mal to be able to dispose of. So he says, كَذَا الْأَخْذُ بَعْدَهُ. And likewise, taking from him بَعْدَهُ بَعْدَ رُجُوئِهِ إِلَى بَلَدِهِ, after he's returned back to his land, لَا يُفْدِي إِلَى الْإِسْتِئْصَالِ. It's not going to lead to his mal becoming decimated. It will only become decimated if he comes to Muslim lands and he's got a limited amount of supply of funds. That's when it's going to become decimated. Okay, everyone understand that? Okay, next. Then he says, وَإِنْ أَشَّرَهُ وَإِنْ مَرَّ ذِمِّيٌّ بِخَمْرٍ. Okay, now let's say this happens. So you're at the checkpoint, a dhimmi comes to you, and this dhimmi passes through the border, and he's got khamr with him, wine. He doesn't have cash, he has khamr. Then what? Do you take the zakat of khamr? Do you take the ushr of khamr? So here there's a problem. That problem is khamr is obviously for a Muslim is considered to be haram. And so how does that work over there? So he says, in marra dhimmiyun, if a dhimmi was to pass by bi khamrin. Now remember, khamr is wine, okay, not alcohol. Alcohol is different. Alcohol is muskirat, intoxicants. So Imam Hanifa differentiates between wine and intoxicants. What I'll do, I don't know, I can't remember. Did I put up a video of how I made wine at home? Did I put that up? I don't know if you guys have seen it. So I basically demonstrate how to make wine at home. Yeah, you seen that one, yeah? Yeah, so that video, basically the wine making video, that video is basically how wine is made and the different stages of wine. Yeah, so you have muthallath wine, you had munassaf wine, and then you have tila, and then you have jamhuri. These are like four types of wine you have, right? And then the first two are considered to be haram categorically. The second two are considered to be okay so long as they don't intoxicate you. And then you have wines that are made or intoxicants that are made from non-grapes, yeah, so dates and from barley and honey and other things as well. Okay, those are, Abu Hanifa says anything besides wine, the specific wine drink, is considered to be non-wine. So therefore, it's not najis. It's something which can be drunk by a Muslim technically, as long as he doesn't get drunk. But we have to be very careful with this. Inshallah, if I don't know, somewhere in our lives, if we get a chance to get to the chapter of Kitab al-Ashriba, then I'll do a full explanation of all the details of that. Yeah, but for now, we don't have to go into all those details, otherwise it's going to take too long to explain. But if this guy now, Harbi, is coming from Dar al-Harb, and you're at the checkpoint, and he's brought all these barrels of wine with him, because remember, he can trade wine in the Muslim country to dhimmis, non-Muslims can buy and sell wine, but it's just that we can't. So he says, marra bi dhimmiyun bi khamr or khinzir, or pigs. He's got all these pigs. So he's allowed to enter a Muslim country with pigs, remember, because non-Muslims are allowed to eat pigs. So long as those pigs and wines are not openly sold in the major cities, it's okay. If it's sold in their own villages and towns, right, it's totally okay, it's fine. For Muslims, they can't do it. What's going to happen here? He says, Ashar al-khamr dun al-khinzir. What you're going to do, the checkpoint, the ashir, he's going to take 1/10 of the value of wine, not the wine, the value of wine, but not the khinzir itself. Yeah, so he's not going to take 1/10 of the value of khinzir. Now, why do they differentiate between the two? So technically, for a Muslim, you're not allowed to become an owner of wine voluntarily, nor can you voluntarily make someone else an owner of wine, and likewise pig. The only way that you can become an owner of wine is if it's done through inheritance, like you've inherited wine. That automatically falls into your ownership without say. So let's say your parents were non-Muslims and they had wine, barrels of wine or bottles of wine. You become an heir of that. And as for also, if you make wine yourself, so you take grapes and then you make the wine, that's also considered to be permissible as well. Right? So you're owner of wine in those two ways. So he says over here, he says, Ashar al-khamr dun al-khinzir. Why is the difference between the two? قوله عشر الخمر أي من قيمتها. So عشر الخمر does not mean you take 10% of the wine. So if he has, let's say, 100 bottles of wine, you take 10 bottles of wine. No, not that. You have to take its value. قال الشافعي رحمه الله. Imam Shafi says لا يعشر هما. Yeah, or لا يعشر هما. The ushr will not be taken. He will not take the ushr of either of the two. Why? Because لا قيمة لهما. For Muslims, there is no value for these two things. Right? There's no value at all for these two things. So Shafi is taken, like you can almost say, the default state when it comes to how Muslims deal with wine and pigs. Because for us, they are not mal. Because for something to be mal, it has to be mutaqawwan muntafa'an bihi. And wine and pigs are not mutaqawwam because the Sharia has made them haram. So anything haram, it has no legal value for Muslims, but it does have a legal value for non-Muslims. That's why it says la qimata lahuma means la qimata lahuma, for them, for us, as Muslims. So anyway, وقال Zufar, Imam Zufar says يعشرهما. So Imam Zufar is on the total opposite of the spectrum. He says Ushr will be given of them too. Again, the mal. So 10% of the pigs are going to be valued. The wine is going to be valued. And then how do you value wine and pigs? So here is where Hanafis differ on this masala. Some Hanafis say what you do is you call two fasiqs. It's strange. You call two fasiqs who are known for drinking and all that, and you ask them how much would they buy it for? How much would it cost? That's what some say. And others say, no, we don't need to do that. We can simply just go to Ahl al-Dhimma, ask them how much in their markets is it worth, and then use that value. Right? That seems more sensible. Anyway, he says, Zufar says, the Ushr will be taken of both khamr and both khinzir as well. لِاسْتِوَائِهِمَا فِي الْمَالِيَةِ عِنْدَهُمْ. Because their maliyah is equal. Just like khamr has no value in the Sharia for Muslims, khinzir has no value, according to us. And just like khamr has a value according to the non-Muslims, khinzir has a value according to non-Muslims as well. Does everyone understand? So this is why they're considered to be both equal in that sense. That's what he's saying. Okay. وقال أبو يوسف, Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, he says يعشرهما إذا مر بهما جملة. He says if the Harbi is coming to you and he's got pigs and wine, you do like a total thing. You take the 10% of the total, the total of all net value. And Imam Zufar says no. If he has khamr, right, you take 10% of that. If he has pigs, 10% of that. If he has both, 10% of each. That's what he's saying. So that's a third opinion, Abu Yusuf rahimahullah's opinion. كأنه جعل الخنزير تبعا للخمر. This is an interesting point. It's as though he's treated khinzir تبعا للخمر. Now, I was actually talking to someone about this masala, and he was a scholar, and he was discussing the masala with regards to in Dar al-Harb. If you're living in Dar al-Harb, would it be permissible for a Muslim to sell wine to the non-Muslims? Because according to Abu Hanifa, you're allowed to deal in riba. Riba is permissible, okay, with the non-Muslims, so long as they're okay to give you the interest. That's fine. But what about wine and pigs? So they don't really mention about wine and pigs. But if you kind of look at this masala, wine and pigs seem to be something which has value according to the Ashir. The Ashir seems to have given it value. So it seems to have a value over here. Actually, you guys can't see the screen there. The Ashir seems to have given it some value. So just keep that in mind. Make a note of this, right? Because this can be used as like a discussion with regards to this. If discussion does come up, then maybe you can look into this to see how, although in Dar al-Harb, you obviously as a Muslim, khamr and khinzir, you shouldn't be dealing with it. But why is it that the Ashir can actually receive it as a qima? فَإِن مَرَّ بِكُلِّ وَاحِدْ عَلَى الْإِنْفِرَادِ. So if two Ashirs came, one has wine, one has pigs, Ashar al-Khamr, the Ashir will take the Ushr of Khamr, dun al-Khinzir. Okay, anyway. He says, Wajhul farq. What's the difference between what Abu Yusuf saying and between the Zahir riwayah? Remember, Zahir riwayah says, you take the Ushr of the wine, you don't take it of pig. أن القيمة في ذوات القيم لها حكم العين. Right, so he says that when it comes to wine is treated as fungible item. It's a fungible item. Fungible item means it's replaceable. So it's like ذوات القيم, ذوات الأمثال. You call it ذوات الأمثال. And why pig is considered to be non-fungible item, means irreplaceable. You can't replace a pig because each pig is unique in its own way. So it's dhawat al-qiyam. So the rule basically is when it comes to fungible items and non-fungible items, that non-fungible items, أن القيمة في ذوات القيم, that value with regards to non-fungible item لها حكم العين, meaning it follows the same ruling as the item itself. So if you have a non-fungible item, this non-fungible item, like a pig, the reason you can't take the value of the pig is because the value has the same ruling as the pig. That's what it's saying. Yeah. So the pig is non-fungible. Non-fungible means it's irreplaceable. So therefore, if you take the value of the pig, it's like you're taking a pig. Yeah. So the value is almost tantamount to taking a pig. But when it comes to wine, wine is amthal. And in dhawat al-amthal, because it's fungible, it's replaceable, the value that you're taking of this is not really the value, it's not really taking wine, it's taking like an external, you're taking an external mal, it's a separate mal. Yeah, so that's basically the difference between the two. Anyway, we'll stop here at that because I'm just going to go over the time then and I've got to explain a few things. So we'll leave it at that and then I'll go over this masla next session, inshallah, again. Right, so I'll go over this masla next session. But he just wants to explain over here, why is it that the Zahir riwayah says you can take from the khamr, but you can't take from the khinzir, right? Whereas Zufar and even Abu Yusuf in one scenario says you can take from the khinzir as well. You can take the value. Okay, if you've got any questions, put in the comments. Just to summarize what we covered today then. So we said, when it comes to the masla of Muslim, 2.5%, Dhimmi, 5%, and Harbi, 10%. This is taken from Umar radiallahu anhu. What if they take, what about taking from them if they have less than the nisab? Can we take from them? Zahir riwayah says no, we don't take from them. Unless they take from our Muslim traders, they take that, right? Even if they have less than nisab, right? And this is because of mujazat, right? But there's two riwayahs in the Hanafis. One seems to be saying that you take from them in any way, as long as they take from us. And the other riwayah seems to be saying that no, you don't take from them if it's a small amount, right? And then we said, what if Harbi comes by and we don't know how much they've taken from us? So you just follow the normal rules of zakat for them. Just take 10 from them. Are we allowed to take all of them, all their mal, even if they take all of our mal? We say no, because this is considered to be like ghadar, and this is like unfair, right? So we're not really going to be taking this. Yeah. So and also, how many times can we take it off them? So the rule is this: two rules. Either 12 months has to pass by, and when they pass by the checkpoint again, we take. Or the second rule is that if they return back to their lands and they come back, they've lost the aman, they've lost this idea of protection of their wealth. Yeah, so they have to be, charged again. Okay, and the final masla was the khamr and khinzir one that we just did. Okay, and then we'll continue inshallah from the wajh al-zahir riwayah. When we give zakat of cattle and goats, do we give the animals themselves because they are zawat al-qiyam? So pigs are in a similar category? No. So because the animals, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned exact things that we take the exact thing unless we want to give its value. So in that case, that value of that particular animal can be given, that particular one. Yeah, that can be given as well. So pigs are in similar category. No, because the reason why pigs aren't, because pigs for us are considered haram. So that's why we say they're not mal. Goat is mal because it's halal. Camels are mal. So that's why we can't do a comparison between the two. You're welcome, Amina. You're welcome. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So Jazakallah khair, guys. Now, what I might do is, because I've got holidays, inshallah.